Craig Lane, not so much Health Alchemy YouTube channel, but just Craig and the gang here on a post-Thanksgiving leftovers night. And we've been doing the theme of fall, eating and cooking, community helps immunity, mucus, and what a sign of that is. And last but not least, the 6 pernicious influences. Can't forget those. So I basically just channeled this little chart here because we're going to do storytelling after a hopefully more brief Craig talk tonight, but we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to throw a few things out there and then see how much I stir up the stew pot out there. So we'll see how thought-provoking we get going here. This is hard cider, by the way. So we're within COVID guidelines. We're at 10 tonight. So, but we are drinking, so watch out. And the spirits are with us. So
at least we're all in one human family. So
we're all one human family. So last week and the week before, we got into the sensory gates and the place in which we perceive and how that's affected by thinking, breathing, eating. Because you talk about addictions, you know, and my teacher once said, you think about you're all addicted, right? Well, try and stop thinking. And then you see how deep your addictions go, because you can't make yourself stop thinking, most of us. And my teacher even admitted, he said, I failed at meditation. He says, my mind would just never shut up. And so when he realized that wasn't going to happen, then he had to reorient to the way he oriented to his own self, right? And so meditation is a very loose term. I was saying last night, and like one woman said, oh, I suck at meditating. And I go, that's not the point. The point is to see that you're sucking. If you become aware that you're sucking at something, that's the point. If you're right here in this moment, that's the point. There's no good or bad. The judge, the part of us that judges, that's the part that needs investigating. It's all about investigating, like when we're out of ease. So that's kind of what this little chart here is. We live in the world of duality here. And so the macrobiotic people got me all into this. And like perceiving life through process is so foreign to Westerners because we perceive life through all the pieces, but we don't know how the pieces fit together. And I got really humbled about that when I was very young, because I knew that I was being lied to about the world. Very young age, I was reading all the the fantasy novels, and the world's kind of magical, and all these adults, like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? But I kept getting told I was wrong, and that's how you drive someone insane. That's a proven way to make somebody schizophrenic. That's how you torture somebody, keep telling them they're wrong. And those of us in this room kind of understand that we all have our own journey around that. I mean, that's why we've come together, because we used to come together, people like us, and this is like we're back till part of the world's coming back when like the Myths of Avalon kind of stuff, where the hidden world on Glastonbury, which is there's an island called Avalon once there, they say, and if you were a witch or understood how to summon the mist, then you could end up in a parallel universe, which be on the same island, but it's not Glastonbury with the church anymore. It's Avalon, which I view Avalon as Eden, the beautiful island, and being run in the right way. The women ran the island, and the men were sort of serving and co-leading on the big councils, but. Like Arthur was there, and Arthur was one of those rare men. You often see that in these literature where the man who can cross into the world of the feminine is viewed as very rare and powerful. And Arthur was one of those, whether he existed or not, Arthur was one of those men apparently. But in the end, they say he sold out everyone to the church. At least Myths of Avalon, Marion Zimmer Brantley's version, he sold us out. And it actually took, and the Merlin betrayed too. So it took the daughter, the sister, right? It took Morgaine. And it's a great mythic, that's one of the things that, we talk about, we've lost the myth. And that's kind of what, my family history is the Lane, and my father's side, and the McLanes were the ones who lived on the Lane and owned the inns. And my whole life started to make sense when I looked into my ancestry. I was like, oh, I'm a Lane. And so my brother is such a, I'll just say good so I don't have to edit this, but my brother's a great storyteller. And I've been so engrossed when he tells a story, it's like I leave my body and I'm in his story with him. When someone's really good at storytelling, like Escape to the movies, right? We hear a good storyteller, and you got someone playing music too, and a naked woman dancing over here, you know, and you figure back in the days before there was no TV, you had to be an entertainer, you know, or have music, and you did have women, and you had probably stripper men too, or men fighting, you know, and that's kind of entertaining, watching two stupid men fight, you know, and as long as it's not too bloody and gory, you know. But back then, who knows? We don't know how they lived. So that's my role. My dharma is, or my ancestor on that side is, it's like, I'm not a natural Leo type center of attention, and this is my God-given thing I'm supposed to do, and I kind of know that now. So in the world of duality, back to this, is there's two forces. That's one's coming down the top of our head. It's a governing vessel 21. It's a kidney and acupuncture point. And so the centripetal force, see how it looks like I asked Ellie before I drew the arrows there, see? These look exactly the same. They look exactly the same. See, then you have to put the force. See, chemistry, we don't look at the actions of life. See, like this is not life. You know, these MTV moments that everybody lives in, you know, like life is a continuous flow. And that's what this is we've got a force coming down from the heavens. That's part of our dualistic nature. And then we have a force that's coming up through the bottom of our foot. This point right here, right in the center of the foot, kidney 1. You can press it right there. Bubbling springs, right? And I felt that for the first time in my life when I was doing Tai Chi Chuan when I was about 27, 28, and I met this woman kind of fortuitous circumstances. And she told me that. She says, when you get really into the zone, you'll start feeling the bubbling springs. And I was just in the flow of this breathing in and out, you know, and whoa, this is weird, you know, like it really is magical to be in your body, you know, like I can't believe this stuff really exists. It was really a cool moment to validate what I'd known so long, you know, like so many of us know that, like the validation of like, I've been lied to, but it doesn't matter anymore because I know there is a use the force loop, you know? And so how do we know the signs of trouble? How do we figure that out? That's what I got really curious about after I broke my neck. And so the story I'm going to go into that in a minute and go away from this because we were talking about frogs earlier, and in the permaculture world, you know, when you see frogs appear, you know that the ecosystem's sort of getting better, you know. And so I've done some restoration of a few houses that I moved into. It was a renter thing, and everything I had made was destroyed, but it was a good lab for a couple of years in each case. And there was a house where in San Luis Obispo, I basically stored this old seasonal creek with my buddies, and it's on the lower part of the property, and I'd go out and do yoga in the driveway. It was a big, long, white concrete driveway. And so this was force coming up out of the ground, force coming down. That made Craig, right? This is the coalescing, see the gates, this green stuff, of the two forces coming together. That's how we were formed. You know, one was from father and one was from mother. You know, the feminine force is the earth and the father force is the above. You know, the natives all took this for granted, you know. They were taught this from a young age, but that's what I'm saying. It's so foreign to start to feel life instead of think about life. It's another level down, see? Yeah. And the natives told Carl Jung that, one of the Navajo shamans, you know. It's like, because Jung was curious. The curiosity comes out of a natural, uncontrived life lived from the heart. And Jung didn't know that yet. So he came out to the West. He started asking all these shamans around the world, you know, what do you think of the white man and the white culture? And no one would talk to him. Like, fuck you, get away from me. You fucking whites. Now you're curious after you've ruined us. You know, kind of attitude. I would be too, all pissy. Fuck off. But this one Navajo shaman in New Mexico gave him audience, and just a litany. He had, you know, just went off. But the last thing he said was, "And you think from here?" And Jung was like, "Of course we do." And the shaman goes, "No, we think from here." And I call that right there the disease of the white man. I have 2 videos about that. And but that's that. Well, that'll be the story I'll tell tonight, actually. It's actually kind of a short one, but I was in a room when I was back east in New England. There's a big lake in New Hampshire. I forgot the name of it, some Indian name, and big, beautiful lake. And there was a men's retreat, and I was trying to overcome homophobia, and I was 30 years old and thinking I'm still too backwards, all the programming for my family, and I was only into 9 years into planting viruses and deprogramming myself. So I was, it's just insidious, all the stuff we're born with, and wow. And so it was an all men's retreat of 100 men, and I was kind of terrified and fascinated at the same time. I'm going to be with 100 men for 3 days, like, on this small bus with these guys. And so we get there, and half of the men are openly gay. So 50 of them are openly gay and pretty flamboyant about it, and I'm like, oh no, because when I was younger, gay men would hit on me all the time. And so it's just, I'm gonna have to fight off a bunch of guys for 3 days, like, this is ridiculous. And but it ended up being everybody behaved, and there was just men, so it was like my first big men's group of 100 men, and we had to eye gaze, and like 50 men in line, and you change positions and just stand for a minute with each man. So it took 100 men, took like over an hour, 100 minutes. So, and so I really tried to understand what a container was. There was a container of energy that was built, and there's a lot of harmony amongst the guys. And there was one firelight circle on the last night, on the Saturday night, that I avoided because all the men were dancing nude around the fire, and it's like, I got a chance to do that later on with the Mankind Project, but there's something primal about being nude, dancing around a fire with a bunch of dudes, with everything flying around, if you know what I mean. A lot of wild stuff swinging around, you know what I mean. It's quite a sight. Now I got the visual fully implanted in everybody's minds. Naked, and there's a full moon on the Saturday night on top of everything else. So you can imagine. I heard him howling. I was in my room kind of cringing, 30 years old. I'm gonna come in and rape all of us. The unconscious fears of the homophobic mind, I'll fully out myself there. Oh man.
The safest sticking with your brother. We're gonna find out.
Yeah. Well, I found my soulmate that night. No, but seriously. The next day, so after a couple of days together, and eye gazing and exposing ourselves, and well, pun intended, in every way possible. This guy came up and he read something from The Return of the Bird Tribes by Ken Carey. And it was the first story in the series of channeled stories by this white man, Ken Carey. And I have two videos on my YouTube channel called The Disease of the White Man, Part 1 and Part 2. And the first one is me reading the story. And for the first 100 times I read the story out loud, I couldn't not cry. So there's this young man, he got up, and I was 30 at the time. This guy must have been 20, maybe 19 or 18. He got up and he got the book and he just read it. That's the whole, it was like a 10-page passage. I've condensed it down to, less than 300 words because it's repetitive, and you lose people, you want to get attention span, right? Like that's why the TV shows are a half hour long, right? They know your attention span's that long, and they're going to lose you. So this kid read, and in a room of 100 men, I'd say 70 were openly weeping. It was like, for a 30-year-old man this hungry for this kind of stuff, I was like, wow, look it touched every man in the room, most of which were white, but there was a lot of different colored, and I think every race was represented out of the 100, which is kind of cool. Every race of human. Yeah, it changed something in here for sure. I was altered. I was never the same after that weekend. And so, I was crying. I cry when, sometimes in a movie, and one of my girlfriends just be like, again? Cool. It's just, I got a soft heart. With a big sword behind it, I guess. That's the problem. So I ended up examining that story over many years, because it's basically, there's an Indian chief, and he's on a horse, and he's charging towards the cavalry, and he's holding up his his spear, and he's got his headdress. You can imagine there's hundreds of feathers coming out, and he's got all the gear on, and he knows he's going to be shot. And as he channels the story, it's about the bullet goes in, and as the bullet kills him, he feels what made the bullet, the women in the factories. And so he takes in the entire white culture into his own soul as he dies. And he talks about the bird tribes, you know, that this is all part of the cosmic cycle, basically. And this is the end of the Kali Yuga, you know, the dark ages are ending. And then, you know, but when there's the most light, summer doesn't come until after the light peaks. In the winter, there's the darkness peaks, and then the light takes a while to come back, and it seems darker because winter's here soon, you know? And it's the same way in the cosmic cycles, they say. We're seeing it right now, you know? We've already passed, you know, astrologically, there's a bunch of major occurrences that have happened and are happening. And so you might say some of it's preordained, and then some of it's like, I call it, we're on a raft down the river of life, and yeah, the river's taking us where it's going to, but we can still steer the raft around a bit, you know? That's kind of, you got some free will and you got some kind of destiny stuff. I mean, we're on this big turtle island thing spinning through space in a cosmic helix, you know? Like we travel through space, we're flying around like that, you know? So it's pretty crazy. And so for me, it's always been about how am I going to be able to channel that? Because there's this other world, they call it the greater world in alchemy. They call it, you know, they call it this Maya illusion, and that's, you know, that's reality, you know. And as far as I can see, that's true. That's what the shamans say when they become a bird and they shapeshift and they go to the other world and they bring something back, you know. And you get better at it, you know, as a bridge, sort of. I believe the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost is the bridge between the two. That's kind of what I've come up with. And that's kind of what we're representing here. The force coming up out of the earth, force coming down. We're kind of curious in this dualistic world. So how do we navigate this ship, you know? And so signs of trouble, it's like we live in the world of the top of the cosmic ocean, but that's what they call meditation, is like we forget that we're in that cosmic ocean. We are that cosmic ocean. And so we just forget and we get caught in the turbulence. We don't realize that right now, this very second happening, it's always and already calm down there. But if we remember that all the time, there wouldn't be any drama. You see? So we have our little drama producing, you know, stuff we do here. Whoopee! I've been called the drama queen by many people. And because in the theater of life, I don't want a boring show. So I got a director back there going, yeah, let's stir up some shit. Cause it ain't never gonna come back again. You know, Carpe Diem we were talking about last night. They extract every last essence of life I can out of this second, you know? So hence, you know, cannabis and plant medicine and, you know, foods and all kinds of stuff. Because if it's not fun, so there's ways to read the signs of trouble. And then if we don't have mucus, then our sensors and our gates, because our senses are what? You can feel the wetness in your mouth, right? You can feel the air coming in. But you can also sense the different qualities of the smell of the air too. That's an enhancement, you know, in this apparatus. And then there's light, but there's all kinds of ways that light, you know, is around us and how we perceive it. So at a young age, I realized, like, you know, what a drastic mistake I'd made by letting myself break my neck. But then I realized, like, you know, at 21, you can get away with a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm living an example of I got away with a lot. I kind of had a death wish, I think, you know. But God, what fun we had. So much fun. And so I'm going to finish my little talk tonight. And I'm doing pretty good, actually. I'm only at, how much time have I been talking? That's all right. You know, we've got our fire helper here. So
It's probably about 20, yeah.
before the storytelling starts, which I'm going to tell the story of a frog spirit. And does anybody else have a story that really just pops in they really want to tell tonight? So I'm thinking the theme is stories of Thanksgiving, like giving thanks for something amazing, or a story of inspiration. You know, like Titanic kind of stories. We want Thanksgiving kind of stories. Anybody got anything burning that they would want to tell?
I have at least.
You at least one thing? Okay, good.
I've got a frog story too.
You have a frog story too? Oh my God, we have a frog theme then. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to say then is, one of the signs of trouble is in our internal gyroscope, if you call it, is when we shouldn't always be in ease either, because we become complacent. You know, and there's actually the macrobiotic people that study, like people that live in the tropics, get slaughtered more historically than those who live in the colder climates. You get complacent. You know, you walk around naked, you know, you do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. And you get hardened when you live up in, you know, the German Nordic, you know, the Nordic tribes, and they come down, the Romans are all pissy. Well, they're living in Rome, you know, it's warm and shit, you know. Survival is not as much of an issue, like, you know, oh, it's winter in Santa Cruz, it might get down to 39, oh, you know. And we're whining about that, you know. Oh my God, we're so wimpy out here. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
39 good.
I'm not saying it's not, but just imagine North Dakota where it's minus 11. It's all, you know, it's like, okay, I feel that's tropical to them, you know. Other people come here and they're like, from Minnesota, they're like, oh, you know, I wear a shirt when it's 40 degrees out. And I'm like, oh my God. It's so relative, right?
Yeah.
To them, it's 50 degrees warmer, you know. Oh, it's minus 11 yesterday. I wouldn't be able to survive. You have like 10 jackets on you because you're tired now. You know?
I went swimming in Cuba in the wintertime, and it was like 72, and the Cubans were saying, oh, muy frio. I just laughing. You know, yeah, right.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, right. So when this ease breaks, one of the things we've been talking about is that's represented as the stirring of the wind internally, or vata derangement in Ayurveda. Because really, I'm here to help bring in the translating of the, you know, natural law has been just split apart, and the divine force has been split apart. And, you know, most of us alive today know there's only one thing going on, and Jesus wasn't, you know, the only one, and Muhammad wasn't the only one. Everybody knows that. It's just these idiots at the top of the food chain that are still thinking they can control the rest of us, but boy, their days are numbered as far as I can see. Hopefully, I mean, James might have another perspective on that, but we will do that tonight. That could be a duke out at the OK Corral forum kind of thing. I had a friend. I was always positive mental attitude, PMA. We'd go surfing, and and then he would counteract with NMA, negative mental attitude. He was a Gemini. He was my best friend just for that reason. Because he was like my antagonist in so many ways, and I grew because of his antagonism, you know, struggle. I was like, oh, I hate this guy, but he's so interesting. You know? Yeah, he was a good guy in the end. But so mucus is the other one internally. When you get mucus, you lose ease, so start to feel a little bit of like, yeah. And we're always going to seek that balance, you know. And then we always kind of like, one of my teachers had said, I want to be balanced all the time. She was Elsa Echeverry. She was she was the shit back in the day down at Pleasure Point, and great teacher. And she had this look of absolute horror on her face when I said that. She's like, Craig, that's death. She goes, you're like this, you know, you had a grandfather clock, and my grandfather had one of those grandfather clocks, and it was always going. She goes, that's what your life is like. You're never going to be completely balanced. Here's the people on the tapes will see it. That's just, you're going to go up, you're going to go down. That's what the I Ching is about. Everybody ever toss the I Ching? Look at the Oracle, you know, the tarot, same way. I've journaled one for 30 years. I have this journal of my I Chings, and it's like, when you're at the top, they always school you, get ready because you're going downhill now. And you're at the bottom like, oh, it's all going to be cheery soon, you know. And it's like, you know, it's like the sine wave of life. And that's what, you know, they're here to remind us, you know, like, and that's what the men's work is about. Men are taught in the older ways, they were taught, you know, life has struggle. So get over it. You know, it ain't going to be all rosy and entitled like these mofos around the world think it is now, you know, like put those guys in a men's group weekend and they ain't going to last very long. You know, I tell you right now. Because that's when you really got to show up, you know, or it becomes very obvious to the men who's showing up and who isn't. And that's how we vet leaders in the olden days. And we're going to start doing it real soon. Because you had to really go through a lot of vetting to leadership in the olden days, you can imagine. And you know what the leaders did in the Indian tribes, like Chief Seattle? When you get to a certain point of wealth, you gave it all away. That was their way. Yeah. Okay, well, we got a lot of money coming our way, don't we, folks? Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And one of those Trump's executive orders with the emergency, that's exactly what that does. Seizes assets. And if you're a child sex slave person, it also seizes their assets. So somebody's seizing a lot of assets. You know, and that's the good news, but hopefully it doesn't go to the bad side of Trump's minions, like, because there's a bad side around there somewhere. I'm sure James can speak to that too, but we won't do that tonight. I'm trying to stir him up over there. I got a smile out of him, see? I got a smile out of him. So mucus is the other one internally, and sort of like lack of ease is sort of the first mucus of consciousness, where we become a little dull. And we've gone over the hump a little bit tonight. We've had, some of you guys had some sweets, and there's always a sort of a sugar rush. Like there was a Simpsons where they ate cotton candy, if you guys ever saw that one. And then they had the whole kaleidoscope brain and rainbows, and they're running around like they're floating on air. And then 5 minutes later, fast forward 5 minutes later, and they're on the lawn all passed out. And I had 100 of those as a kid, cotton candy especially. I mean, it's basically blown up sugar, for God's sakes, and just goes right in your bloodstream. Talk about an insulin rush. And sidelight, but I never thought that was fair to do a glucose challenge and give you pure glucose syrup. That's not a fair way to challenge your glucose. We never do that in real life. I got sick to the stomach. I was sick for 3 hours, and I'm like, this isn't fair. Why should we have brown rice equivalent? Give me 300 grams of brown rice equivalent, and then we'll have a real measure of my blood sugar challenge. So I never have pure glucose syrup. Do you guys? Here, give me some poison. Let me see how I do with the poison challenge, basically. That's what it is to our body. It's pure acid. Glucose syrup is pure acid. It's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in some, C32H25O2, That's all it is. Carbonic acid, hydrochloric acid, and oxygen is pretty reactive, folks. So it causes a lot of internal rusting, is what happens with a lot of oxygen. And we don't even think about that stuff. You never thought of it, but I read Sugar Blues by William Dufty years ago because one of my teachers at Cabrillo, Mr. Haddis, actually all these years ago when I was suicidally depressed, and he goes, you need to eat less potatoes and go read Sugar Blues. So I have a whole essay about that. But so we don't understand, the old apothecaries used to use sugar and give it out in half teaspoon doses, sort of relax somebody. Yeah, if they were too alkaline, it happens, like where you have a little blood sugar challenge. So I'm going to go off of this thing now, move this, the signs of trouble and thinking, breathing, eating, so the back of this thing's really warm now. We don't need it over here. We'll put the warmth over by James. I keep picking on James for some reason, I don't know why. Look at his eyes are closed. All right. He's smiling though, that's right. So we'll do, am I gonna do a screen share? I guess I'll have to. Okay, all you folks watching this, you'll have to see what I'm reading. Because I need to tell the story, but I also need to tell it, because there's a few details that I had journaled from. My life is such a freak show that I was prompted by Spirit after I broke my neck to journal my life. So I had a series of journals about that big. I compiled from age 21 until I stopped about 40, 41. And I loosely collect stuff now, but I mean, I look at the detail, I'm like, that happened to me? Like, wow. So at this point, this was in 1996, I was 31 years old. I was in the Cushy Institute in Massachusetts, up in the Berkshires, very beautiful. And 3 rivers, I think it was 2 or 3 converged near the house where I was staying at. It's like a big Victorian white building, you can imagine. I was on the top floor where the apex was, and I had a window that looked out towards the south, and there was a big elm tree outside of it. And it was pretty nice. I mean, until I realized I was horribly eating the wrong diet in the middle of sort of my training, middle towards the end, but that's not the long story. So I'm gonna read this. So this is a dream I had in May, actually, a day after my birthday, May 2nd. So I'm going to read from this, and then the second one, this was a precursor. I had forgotten this dream, and then 2 years later, I had another dream, but I had forgotten the first dream. So this is pretty strange. I stood watching for a competition I was in with some other men. There was an unusual event of downhill sandboarding and bicycling. Sandboarding and bicycling. Sandboarding is pretty interesting. We were watching a guy go just ahead of me down a very steep ledge on a sandboard into a pool of sand. He had not landed properly and had half buried himself. It looked kind of funny. I thought, how brave to attempt that degree of difficulty. Suddenly it was my turn to go. I jumped off the ledge and began sliding down the steep sand hill. Many people and strange beings like, Star Wars kind of stuff, were cheering me on as I gained speed. It was freestyle with a mandatory jump over a sand pool and points given for style and grace. I had checked out the spot way in advance where the previous guy had fallen into the sand pool. I knew where to avoid and where to land. As I approached the jump ledge, I hesitated slightly. Doubt overcame me. And as I jumped high into the air, easily 20 feet above the sand, I looked down with horror as the sand was magically falling into a crevice, leaving black holes. I fell into a hole, fell for what seemed an eternity, and found myself unhurt, standing in a dimly lit area. I had no bearings of where I was, except it seemed like a cave with a sand bottom. Suddenly, a large frog being appeared, about my size. An instant of fright arose, then a memory of some sort put the fear back in its place. The memory became clearer to love whatever arises in myself. I could feel it trying to communicate with me, the being, but I woke from the dream, surprised and curious. So I'd forgotten that, and I told the story to these guys a little bit earlier, but I was a couple of years into permaculture at this point, and so I was working on just life was a lab. So I was living in this house where we were trying to restore, and the frogs had come back, in this backyard, and I was really into it, and I was early into my cannabis sort of experimentation with things, and but I'd always sort of been on the edge of this world of life and death and the world of nature. We've all, when you sit and just listen to the frogs or the squirrels, or there's a magical connection to all of it, and it's really amazing it tapped into that. So this was a couple of years later in San Luis Obispo, I believe. Make sure. So I was living, you can imagine the change in climate even, Jesus. I've heard it said that animals and plants have a group consciousness. Humans do also, but they tend to identify with our own unique individual. As I got older, I began to realize I was much more than just me. An example of this occurred one fine night while dreaming. I was living in a home that had open space on 3 sides. The house was situated in a slight slope with a backyard on a downhill with a creek that flowed into the wet months. There was also an open field on one side with wild plants, grasses, calendula flowers, and a few willow and other oak trees. When there was water in the creek, one could hear frogs croaking away during the dark hours. The frogs of this creek were more like chirpers. Most were tiny little creatures about 1 or 2 inches big. I would often wonder where they went during the dry months. I would also wonder if the pollution bothered them and what they ate. A genuine concern would arise for their well-being. One night, I got an answer to my questions. As I fell asleep on a dark winter night, really dark day, and I lay listening to the musical sound of the frogs that they were producing, and I lost my sense of identity. I lost my sense of identity with myself and the sounds, and suddenly I was asleep. An image appeared before me in a dream, and out of nothingness was a huge man-sized frog. Immediate revulsion arose, but without fear. I thought this being could hurt me, but there was no fear. Then a sense of acceptance and relaxation arose. The frog was watching me intently during these moments. After the acceptance arose, it spoke to me. He asked me what I wanted. It felt like it was reading my thoughts. I thought of the creek and my concern for the little frogs. I thought of my backyard and my intention to continue turning it into a sanctuary for plants and living things. My roommate and myself were transforming an old dump of a discarded home junk, sinks, car parts, and old treated wood into a garden. This area bordered the creek. Suddenly I knew why the frog had appeared in the dream. It was the group consciousness testing me. 2 years had passed since the last frog dream. What did I want? An instantaneous inquiry happened, and then the realization that all I wanted was for them to be happy. As this became more clear to me, the frog's expression changed, and a felt sense of my being accepted and acknowledged appeared in my stomach. And another fear arose, a fear of being watched. At this point, I fell through what felt like quicksand onto a sand dune. It was bright and sunny, yet hazy and unclear also. I struggled to my feet and another frog being appeared. He did not appear threatening, he was just watching me. I thought, what am I doing here? Then another series of communications appeared in my thoughts from the frog. He said I was being tested and being watched. I wondered if I was always being watched by some kind of unseen being. Have you ever had that feeling of being watched, yet known rationally that nothing could be watching you? It was a very disconcerting feeling and spooky. The frog acknowledged this and said, something formless is always witnessing the antics of the creatures that do have form. This also seemed spooky. I could not let go of the weirdness of talking to a frog spirit. At this point, I fell again into a hole in the sand with the feeling of falling a long ways for a long time. I woke having remembered the whole dream, and a sense of wonder came in. Could my overtures toward nature have summoned this being? Could my reconstruction of the dump have made the frogs a little happier? Without risking my own projections, I assumed I would never know. Yet after the night, the sounds of the frogs always brought a deeper sense of, profound sense of peace. And that is my story for tonight. Those are much nicer dreams than those nightmares that, okay, so Monica, we're still officially on here. You want to have an official story time story for the people here?
Sure.
Okay. I want to get off this weird screen share I'm on now. There we go. So we'll point this towards the fire while you tell your story. That would be a nice, people can watch the fire while Monica tells her story. We'll put everybody to sleep. There we go. Okay. It's up for you.
So I want to just dive into this feeling that I've been having all as the evening has gone on, of the beauty of a story of people who have lived decades wondering and unsure about what was wrong with our world. And although we could see plenty of individual things, where really, how far does it go? How deep is it? Where's the real start of this issue? And how do we even begin to talk about it? And that we all were on the same journey together, and sometimes we would wind up in a eye gazing or anything else that might allow us to actually connect and ask that question and get a little further in the story. And really, I think all our hearts clearly were asking for the way to change to a new society where we would actually go back to human connection more. And if all of those wishes and thoughts could have come together in speech sooner, if we might have actually had group conversations the way our great-grandparents did, because they didn't have other things to entertain them, what would we have come up with? And how possible is it that that nebulous energy that went out from each of our hearts is how we got to this place where the world had to look like it was completely upside down, insane, illogical, unkind, divided, and newly fighting in ways that none of us had ever expected or thought we would see. If that's the chaos that we were actually asking for. Because chaos is one of the most incredibly fertile soils there is for all of us to put our hearts and heads together for the invention. And tonight, I'm just really grateful for the way that this has grown the last 8 months, that we went from unsure what we were going to do and a few people meeting here and there, and eventually a whole lot of ideas came out about, well, we could be meeting at beaches and parks, and we could be talking about all these different subjects we care about, and health, and what can we really do together? It's turned out pretty darn great for those of us willing to do this. So I want to open the idea that we're all in the process right this tonight of a new way of listening and hearing each other.
Snippets, Rosemary.
I've been feeling the bubbling fountain in my K1 since you guys said it. And I'm just aware that it's constant choice how much I'm going to let my body really feel. And I'm doing it beautifully with all of you, and I think I up that by saying so. Yes. I think that, I choose that, I know that. I'll speak it through my heart and make it more. I just love all of these themes that we've all been playing with for months now. And it's up to us if we just choose right here, right now. This begins a new era where we all accept even more, that every time we see each other, we'll remind each other to feel and sense things on a deeper basis. Because we give each other permission to do it. So everybody that wants to add to that, and anywhere along the line with me, come and talk to me. I want to hear it. Add it tonight. Make up a little bit of the story of where else are we going? What else are we doing with this? I'm much happier having more community in the ways that we've been creating than I was a year ago. And I didn't know that until enough time has been passed. I love all the people I used to love. I still love those memories. But I never got to do this. You know, every week. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to second that, and I would like to thank Drew and Ellie and you for all inviting us and making this community, giving us things to do to bring us together. It's been really joyful for me and saved me from, total isolation. So thank you all. And James, to everybody,
Well, we're all the freaks, like I call my life the freak show, and we're all the freaks, we're all the people that generally don't see life the way everybody else does around them. It's, I had a tirade on her earlier, and it came out of nowhere. She just showed up, and sometimes it happened when Noelle was here. I was telling her, like, a couple of people in my life where it's like it just, and a fit of anger and rage, and she got to witness it, just cussing and because I have a righteous anger running right now. I've been running for 40 years, but right now it's particularly acute because there's a number of people in the room that'll understand. My heart I can't take the bullshit gaslighting going on and see my mom so manipulated, and it just, the projector in me just goes nuts. It's like, so I needed a punching bag, and so she's just kind of stood there and took it for a little bit.
Did my best to transmute it.
Yeah, because it was a shit show for a little bit there. But I mean, that's what the Magdalene energy was. That's why Magdalene was called a whore, because the women needed to fuck the war out of the men. That's what the monkeys did. That's what in the smart old world, like when my ancestors, the Lanes, were doing their storytelling and whatnot. That's what the hookers, the whorehouse was about, really. It wasn't even that. It was accepted that the women helped the men calm down. In the Bonobo Monkeys, my friend Paul told me, go watch the Bonobo Monkeys on YouTube, and it's basically if one of the male monkeys gets too, rambunctious, the two of the women just basically rape the guy, and he's all calm afterwards. It's like, I love that. So the Magdalene energy is like, that's what she gave me today. It doesn't have to be sexual. It's just the feminine energy is what, in Chinese medicine, water controls fire. So that's a good example of that, right? Just tampered my fire a little bit. I got to get it off my chest, and because I'm pissed. And we don't want, she knows, you don't want Craig Lane walking around with a sword all day. That is not what the world needs. This guy, James, understands, we don't want James walking around with a sword all day. It's fucking dangerous.
Why'd you get anything to kill you?
I got that same energy. I look into his eyes and I go, oh, fuck, he's got what I got, like you got a fucking warrior in there. You got to use that energy carefully, but it's a wonderful energy to use. Righteous anger, to me, is like, yeah, baby, and we've been exploring our fears in the common law class, so we had one of the guys, John, played the judge. And so what are you really afraid of when you go into court? it's a great thing to explore. What is I'm really afraid of? You know, 'cause I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of the suffering on the way to death. I got real clear about that in my hospice training. You know, and then my teacher Adyashanti once in a silent retreat challenged all of us. He's like, "Oh, you spiritual people, you're not afraid of death." He goes, "You're afraid of life." And that went right into there. I was like, "Oh, he nailed it." That's called embodiment. That's the other half. Everybody wants to ascend. You know, he counteracts with that. He goes, "Oh, you all want your freedom? Well, give the world its freedom from you." He said, "That's the other half. You'll never have your freedom until you free the world of your shoulds about it." That's the other half. I had no idea about that until he said that. And I was like, it was like a whole other world opened up in my consciousness. I was like, oh, my 19th chakra just opened up, you know, like laugh out loud. And something just opened up over there. Like, what was that? Somewhere over there, you know. But that's what the gold of what someone's experienced there. We're all just like this book here. I found the book. David Stewart, The Chemistry of Essential Oils. Subtitle, God's Love Manifest in Molecules. What the F? This is the bridge Holy Ghost stuff. See, the woo-woo to the hard science. It can be done, and we're doing it as we speak. Enzymes, we're talking about enzymes, you know, if you have brain fog, because all your enzymes are down in your stomach. You've used all up your bank account to put it downstairs. You know, they say where your attention goes, your energy goes. Well, now we know why, because your enzymes are all down there. You know, it's like, that's what we're doing, is we're translating this frequency stuff, because it's really just frequency. So when you're in the room with, oh my God, I would go in the room with like, it was before Adyashanti, it was one of those kirtan kind of Siddhi yoga, I think, Siddhi, Siddhi yoga. And they were doing this chant, just like 2 chorus lines repeated for 35 minutes. So I got started, and I was probably a good 6 years into my meditation practice. You know, I thought I was pretty hot shit at that point. But for the first 2 or 3 minutes, my brain was just going, how am I going to make it through 35 minutes of this? You know, my brain just going, I'm not going to be able to make it. I better just walk out now. You know, you probably all had this feeling at various times in your life. There's that moment of like, am I really going to stay here and do this? And then I invested. And then the next 32 minutes went by in 3 minutes. It was very odd. It was like, what just happened? Like, wait a minute. That was weird. That was kind of cool. Like, and it happened again a few years later in an acupuncturist office. Michael Burton, I can name him because I love this guy, a green-eyed tiger. And my second visit with the guy, he did my intake my first time. And the second visit, he put some needles in me and then left the room, and like an hour had gone by in reality. And I was astral traveling through each room in the office, going, wow, this is cool. I can go over here, and oh, the secretary's talking over there. And, you know, I wasn't poking anybody naked or anything, but you know, I probably would have had the chance. You know. Just to out myself completely. Donald Trump Jr. over here.
That's a man's circle.
It's the cider. It's got to be the cider. So in my world, maybe 5 minutes had gone by, maybe 5. And he knocks on the door, you know, from my side. I'm like, what? It's only a few minutes have gone by. He's like, Craig, an hour has gone by. So I came in at 30 minutes and didn't even realize I existed. And you know those moments when you're sitting in class. I used to sit in class and watch the second hand in elementary school and second and third grade. You ever do that, James, where you just watch the second hand and see how long you can just watch the second hand go? Because it's so boring to listen to the teacher. You find some way to distract yourself from the fucking teacher who's just so dull. You're gonna fall asleep if you hear one more word. Tick, 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 tick. It's like time seems to go by so slow. And then it's like this kirtan thing, you really give ourselves to the moment. Or, you know, when you've really given yourself to the moment, and then you have that first date that goes, you know, 6 hours has gone by, and you go like, you really connect with somebody, and it's like, wow, 6 hours just went by, you know? And it seemed like half an hour. We've all had that, you know? And that's where time is sort of relative on some level, you know, in our subjective
Yeah,
world.
YouTube does that to me. Facebook.
Oh, Facebook is a total, I know, the altered universe in there. You're like, wait, 45 minutes just went by? I thought it was only 5. What? Oh, full on. But, you know, what one value of Facebook, I missed out on it today, but you know, you come in and it says your memories from the past. You guys have that in your feed? Well, I had one from, it was a beautiful chemtrail post where I had done the arrows and the analysis of the whole cloud, the natural cloud formation versus the, you know, it was like my educational piece on Facebook, and they let me post it, you know, and they said, they was like, they were fucking with me today. Here, your memories. I didn't share it right away. And I did one right click arrow and I tried to come back and it was gone. And if I go down my timeline, I mean, I've been on Facebook, I think 10 years. So it's like, they're scrolling for hours on my side. Where is that post? Because you can't search, can you? Can you?
They make the searches
I know they do. They're really
so
difficult.
bad.
And then just when you get to know something, they change it.
That's another mind fuck. I noticed that the whole black background now,
Oh,
it's so satanic. It's perfect for them. It's their new fit. It is.
But the whole point is, it's all constantly messing with us.
Yeah.
All the Microsoft things, every time they changed everything, it was messing with us and getting us to buy the next upgrade, and we did it. Fools that we were. So I'm afraid, again, en masse, we've watched humanity get us exactly to where we had to be here.
Well, that's the polarity. I was watching. I've been going through some of the old. I actually did a Google search on. I'm a Trekkie. I went to the Santa Cruz Civic Auditorium when I was 8 years old to a Star Trek convention. I admit it. So I've been going back to the old Star Trek movies, like what's the best of. So I just watched 2 of them. And in the latest one, the villain was like, it was a great theme. He's like, you don't advance without struggle. And it's a great, like, it's an antagonistic role, but it's really true. Complacency doesn't get you anywhere, usually. Some of us I have an internal sergeant. I don't need to be in classes. Like, I don't need a yoga class. I don't need any classes. Because I already got a guy back there going, get your ass out there and work! You know, so I don't need that externalized, you know. Like if I was in boot camp, I would punch the sergeant, you know. I'd be like, fuck off. James would understand, I think, right? If you were in boot camp, you know, I wouldn't last very long in boot camp, you know. I'd just be like, I already got the sergeant. I don't need you, you know. But being around other men really helps that, because I had friends when I was younger that would, like, Rodeo Gulch, everybody riding your bike up the hill, Rodeo Gulch there? It keeps getting steeper and fucking steeper. Excuse my language. Oh, FCC regular violation, sorry.
This is still being recorded?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we should turn it. That's the fun. It's all being captured, bro. It's
Didn't you
steeper.
start this? You put a question out to us about
Stories.
where is this going? Stories.
Yeah.
and
You got a
how
story
long
for
it's
us?
been happening? Maybe. I mean, I came in and sat down, and something that was reinforced was when you limit some of your sensory perceptions, other ones became stronger. So I was talking with Monica, and the subject came up of kind of like spidey sense, and what she reminded me is we put energy out through our eyes as well, which is no excuse for why my eyes have been closed.
What are you hiding?
What am I
Yeah, what are you
hiding?
hiding?
But it kind of led to a conversation, and I described a story where in 2007 I had the opportunity to work on some space that was on the same piece of property, but it was a half mile away, and so I would walk back and forth. And I realized that I felt a presence there, and so I had a strong flashlight. I was making noise, and I had this tool that was about 8 pounds. It was aluminum with actually a line of steel teeth and a tether, so you could put it on your wrist. And it was designed to separate shoulders and legs of cattle and pigs and stuff. So anyway, I felt the presence, and I was kind of doing my own thing, and I would work all night. It was really fun. I wasn't making that much noise. I didn't really give a shit, but I may have been making some noise. So I'm coming back the next morning, and just a few feet off the road trail is a deer with its insides eaten. And I'm like, you know what? I did feel a presence, and there was one. And so Monica just reminded me that we put out energy through our eyes, and that's probably not the reason why my eyes are closed. But as far as how long has this all been going on and how I could tie it to what's going on now, it seems like, you know, like Plato and Roman times, they were talking about eugenics. But to jump forward, to go back just 130 years before electricity really started to go around the planet, it has greatly affected the human being's ability to be a human being. And now we have the latest and greatest, and we think our lives are becoming more simple by all these gadgets, when it's simply our own, we're asking for our own genocide by complacency. So, and I think
Complacency again.
I think we're heading to the same direction, in the same direction, whether or not that small percentage of the population wants to cull 95% of us, or whether or not the sixth mass extinction is a complete runaway train already. It's just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think the last 8 months have allowed me to be a really sneaky criminal. Maybe I'll shut up.
That sounds like a brand new story.
I'll just close my eyes.
Well, the thing is, there's an old saying from the Tao Te Ching: keep your jade hidden under common clothes. You know, it's a very wise thing to do. Is you don't cast pearls before swine, is the Western pointer.
Don't cast pearls before swine.
Yeah. You ever heard that?
No, and I'm not quite sure I understand it.
Don't cast your pearls before swine.
Pigs don't understand the value of a pearl.
Right.
Okay.
Very well, yeah.
Knowledge is similar.
Okay.
So my story segues into that. You know,
Oh, great.
being a presence,
That's awfully
the
good.
horny goat weed, the
Yeah.
problem of horny men and things like that. So there's this beautiful woman.
That's a
she's-
problem.
Well, maybe you. So there's this beautiful woman. She's walking by a lake. There's lots of bulrushes. It's very green, and there's lily pads on the lake. And she hears this sound. And she bends down. She feels a presence. And she bends down and sees this frog. And she picks the frog up and holds it up to her eyes. And she says, "Oh, hello, little froggy." And the frog begins to speak. He says, "Hello." He said, "Hello." And he was speaking in English. "I'm a prince. I'm a prince. Please kiss me. Kiss me." And she smiles and looks at the frog and says, "Wow, a prince." And then as she puts the frog into her pocket, she says, "I'd rather have a talking frog."
That's a short.
Oh, that's a short, good one.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Well, I would like to add to what a couple of people spoke to earlier, and that is that I really feel, and others have conversed about this, I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be. A little over a year ago, I had a completely different life set up, something that was, full of a lot more ease and a lot more of a future of what I actually really enjoy doing with my day, which is different from what I have passion for doing in my day. And even though I could probably manage to eke out some sort of existence to some degree still doing that, I don't have a desire to do that because my passion is stronger than my desire of what I'd like to do with my day. And my passion is really doing what I'm doing and here trying to work on making the world a better place with everything that's going on in whatever way that I can. And absolutely, as was said earlier, I'm having more fun now with folks than I was before. I mean, before all this happened, when I was still doing stuff here in Santa Cruz, the best we had going on was maybe, once a month we'd hang out all together and occasionally go, do a couple other activities. And now it's like every week I get to see my favorite people. pretty much.
Every day.
Almost every day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. So anyway, yeah, you guys are all fantastic. Happy to work in this crazy time together.
Mhm.
It's like before, I always used to say, you know, it's so hard to get together with people. Everybody's got their own orbit. They're cranking it, you know? What I do on Tuesdays, what I do on Wednesdays, what I do on Thursdays. You know, sometimes it takes you 3 months just to get
Right.
a lunch
Yeah.
date with your best friend,
Right.
because that's how it's been.
Mhm.
So a lot of that crazy distraction, orbiting, differentiation stuff is gone. And then the people coming back to like good old fashioned values, like eating together,
Mhm.
paying attention to what you're eating,
Right.
learning about health. Really listening to each other, you know, because you're less distracted and you're more, you know, like your attention is more concentrated.
Mm.
And I think more of us can show up, you know, because we're not all these tendrils going out in the directions.
I still do.
And
Well, you're not in this.
part of that is this overlay of supposedly this, you know, the social isolation overlay that's supposedly part of the scene right now, which makes all this consistent connection really valuable. And I mean, we've had a lot of catalysts for this, and I consider this a great gift in my own personal life, with Ellie organizing the beach thing and all the other things that are happening with the music and the, you know, each person has had their piece to add with participating and coming together. And it may not be the same people all the time, but the consistency and the continuous connection that's happening, it reminds me of when I used to be so happy to be able to visit, like on Thanksgiving with family members. Because we always had this big thing at our grandfather's ranch that, you know, 250 people would show up, a big potluck outside, and
Yeah.
no matter what, I mean, I don't think it ever rained. And so we always got to, it was in Southern California. But that consistency of knowing that you could count on connecting with whoever you were meant to connect with at that event, or, you know, and maybe a smaller circle of that at Christmas. And even though we didn't see each other a lot during the rest of the year, that connection was so valuable. And I have to say, it's been recreated in this circle of people, you know, with the times that we get together, with the, you know, all the events that have been scheduled and that we make happen as a group, and our cooperation, just like Monica was saying, in each of our own personal evolution of where we are in this moment, and how we can give each other the gift of being open and receptive and hugging at a time when we're not supposed to be, you know, doing these things. We're like, Drew always
That's
says,
the only reason we do it, right?
yeah, we're all rebels, obviously. But the fact that we are in a space where we all feel comfortable with doing this as a group with one another, and open arm, you know, connecting and touching, and just that strong energy of being in each other's space and seeing each other, truly seeing into the souls of one another and the gifts that we have for one another and the magic. And that takes time and evolution and being in the flow of the energy, like what you were discussing tonight. And, you know, the give and take of it coming in and going out. That magic is so valuable.
it's the most valuable gift we can ever give to one another. And to me, that is the special energy that exists and happens within this group. And it's not always the same people all the time.
Right.
They come and go, and each one has their own special, unique gift that they add. And if we stay open and receptive and not shut down or become so negative that we push it away, that is what we're here to do. I have always been a person in this life who felt like, man, let's get it done, get it over with. I don't want to suffer anymore. I want to be done with this physical reality. I want to just move on to the spiritual plane. But I have to say, I'm so glad I'm still here to experience this particular moment in time, instead of, just letting go. Because, and the impetus for that has always been, I don't want to have to do this over and over and over. I just want to do it at the best possible level that I can do in this lifetime, so I don't have to. And that's what this is all about for me. And all of you have been a participant. Each and every one of you is a great gift, to this particular moment. The special energy, this one especially, have added, to me in my self-realization and the realization of who each one of you is in my life, and the special energy, just when we embrace each other and touch each other and, share who we are with one another. That is amazing. I'm glad I haven't missed out. So thank you all. That's what I'm thankful for. And my persistence for sticking it out. Because there have been times when I just thought, no way, I just can't do another day.
When you were talking, I don't have a story, but a remembrance, which was kind of shocking, happened.
Interesting.
Because I was at a retreat with Sri Kaleshwar with actually Daniel's former partner.
Oh.
And we were all, you expect to all up the retreats. And Sri Kaleshwar started talking about when darkness comes, what are you going to do? What are you going to think? How are you going to, deal with it? And then, make a long story short, he said, always look for the light. Always look for the light. Don't stay in the darkness. You're going to find light everywhere. You open your eyes and look far and near, and you'll be fine. Look for the light. Stay with the light. So I'm kind of shocked. I don't remember that at all. You just look for being around the people who are there. And he kept saying far and near, far and near. So Don and I were talking about it. He goes, well, over in Europe or over in, he really was trying to, that particular group, have a thing. So it was, then next retreat, Kaleshwar was having trouble getting out of the country. I forgot what was going on, but so apparently the disciples brought it up again. I was, like you call it, Kaleshwar again. And remembering your darkness could be having a bad day. Your darkness could be catastrophic. What's happening? Something is going to happen. So it's happened for me. This is like my life. I'm probably just everything and every which way. Yeah. I'm actually glad that Diana invited me here because a lot of my people people I knew before, and really can't do anything with them anymore because I sit there alone and listen to CNN. You know,
Oh, man.
it's really difficult.
Well,
I've known these people for like 30 years in many groups because I work for Santa Cruz City Schools and Sheriff's Department, and so I just, all these people are, you know, you're in a book club, you go places, so it's like, I whittled down to just a few people
Wow.
for my own, you know, sanity, and it just, you can't say anything. But
Yeah.
anyhow, in the middle of your, I appreciate it, it was really pretty strong remembrance. And that's helpful too.
and we can't make that up.
Yep.
Some moment like that happening is so dreamlike and so otherworldly while we're still enmeshed in this one that we recognize, and everything's changed. Oh, a great line about it came. The veils are thin, but synchronicities got thick. And we all are able to kind of understand that and see it if we'll just open a little more. It's really clear that things are getting very cool. And it's, as we know, we have to feel everything to heal. We were talking about some other aspects of horrible family patterns and whatever else, but if we could think about children being raped, which horribly is just extremely common in all Western cultures, as Alice Bailey, not Alice Bailey, Alice, oh no, her last name's gone too, I couldn't even come up with that, sorry, skip it, said Alice Miller was saying, all children who have been raped will grow up not necessarily remembering it, but having those urges, and we have to forgive our parents and grandparents, and you know, it's a multi-generational thing. What happens if we do the typical child thing and we accept self-loathing or blame for someone hurting us because we don't have in our cultures to say that hurts, and you're not allowed to say that hurts by families because they didn't want to admit it hurt when it happened to them and whatever else. If we replace that with a self-loathing feeling or whatnot, then we have to get to the place where we really say enough about every kind of feeling we've had for a memory to come up like that. And it just totally, I mean, you were saying what you were in our conversation, and I got 100 times how I would say something hurt to my parents, and they would do what most parents do. Like, oh, that's no big deal. You know, just buck up. Your sister wouldn't do that to you. I'm telling you she did. No, she wouldn't. You know that. So that everything got buried, and I was so busy feeling the fake feeling that was put on, which children absorb so easily, that it takes an extra effort then to ever get to the place of realizing it would have been great if I could have said I'm hurt to the person doing it, to everybody, and actually get a reaction, a response, a validation, and a caring. You know, oh, well, I didn't mean, yeah, why am I doing this? And I feel as though we really are in that place now where we could have that much more regularly, just by our choosing to practice it with each other. So, and we're choosing to have conversations that go much deeper than we were having before, when life wasn't much more electric as it's become.
The freedom of being in your own authenticity,
Yes.
which in this kind of a group where we are all so open to who we actually are, and it's more of a finite level as opposed to the whole world where you get to go out there and be superficial. And because the field has been narrowed, we can be more authentic in deeper ways.
Yeah.
And it's such a great thing.
This is humanity evolving.
Yes.
We are actively a part of it. All the more if we say so and decide to make ourselves even more in our hearts to do it.
Quick check-in. We're still being recorded, so
Oh, we are?
yeah. So I probably want to acknowledge that if I just turn this thing off. Okay, folks, let's have some kind of closure. How do we click closure on all that is a question.
I could like to offer something in closure.
Great, Drew's got closure.
Become the change you want to see in the world.
Come the change you want to see in the world.
What kind of world do you want to live in? You know, start practicing that.
You know, this has been a regular Friday night thing, and we don't have to edit this one at all because I think some people would enjoy, and I can put it in the description, you know, this people might enjoy these kind of conversations. I get a little bit of input back through newsletters, and some people will just say, hey, I really appreciate that talk you guys had. So a few people in my life, my mom even has watched a few of these talks, which really, you know, it's like, she has to watch it on her little phone. So it's like, wow, really made an impact. She's watching it on her phone, you know, because she's out in Corralitos, and they're just, you know, they're old timers. They don't know how to get the right. It's like, Mom, you can hook your phone up to your TV, you know, and then watch it on the big screen. But we've offered to help. It's like, okay, you can stay over there and watch it on your phone. It's fine, but we love you, Mom. And the closure is, yeah, be the change you want to see in the world. And I know it's probably like I was 25 years ago, I was 30, and I kept noticing I was putting these labels on people that I was with, friends or my girlfriend. I'd be like, you know, if I want that from them, then I need to be that first.
Mhm.
It's a magical realization to realize, like, oh, that's what the universe is. I have to demonstrate what it is, and then I get it. You know, and I generally have performance anxiety on a lot of levels, you know, so it comes around, and then my mind, I have a very creative mind. It makes up all these, like, because I grew up in a deprivation consciousness, you know, world of not enough time, not enough money. And so I go into these modes of like, oh, it's not enough of me, and shame, you know, just the shame story that's kind of back there. But then I have this other voices because of all the counter programs I put into my consciousness since I was 21 of, you know, the viruses of yoga and mantras. And so this other one comes in and it's like, what are you bringing? And so I'm going to my families with like, yeah, I need to be the change I want to see in my family.
Mhm.
So I'm coming in with an open heart. And it was great. It's funny how we have these self-fulfilling prophecies go in all like triggered from the start. And then what do we get? A triggered outcome. And that's why I don't do astrology either. I mean, we got to tie this together. So we're going to leave the astrology part out and just kind of be the change you want to see. And if you want love, give love. If you want appreciation, give appreciation. That's kind of what Thanksgiving, I was saying the other day, is one of my favorite holidays because it's like you get a chance to actively practice what you preach. You know, and I was telling one of you guys, George Osawa, one of the macrobiotic people, has the 7 conditions of health. And these are what they're uncontrived. If they're there, it's a good sign. If they're not there, you're not there yet. And one of them is natural gratitude. Uncontrived natural appreciation. I'm not there a lot of the day. 98%. Maybe 2% of the day I get some natural gratitude, you know.
You're too kind to yourself.
I'm being too kind. Jay, you get it. You know, it's like when it comes around, it's like, oh God, grace, thank you. I'm feeling some gratitude naturally. It's like God-given grace.
I was just trying to make people laugh.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is Craig Lane from the McLean Storytelling Clan of, I list all that word orator, you know, like, 'cause I like that word better than storytelling. You know, like the orator world here. Community dinner, and it's 10 o'clock. I don't know how long this one went for, but signing out, folks.